Right. Yeah, I can't wear this. Part of the NAS Compares Irony collection. I think we can all admit that 2025 so far has been something of a dog for Synology. You know, their change on hard drive and SSD support policies on their 2025 series of devices, a release of a slew of new hardware releases where the actual hardware has not exactly been reinventing the wheel. I think a lot of users have been worrying about this brand, the changes they've been making, and ultimately whether they are going to change and turn things around. And the big question is this device here on the table, the BeeStation Plus, going to make a big change? Well, no, of course not. It's the BeeStation. No, this is not what this device is about. This is not your typical Synology NAS system. And frankly, anyone that's even marginally invested in the brand is not going to care about this. But that's the point. This isn't for you. This isn't for you who already own Synology NAS systems, who already have got a deep understanding of network technology. Much like the previous generation BeeStation, this device, the BeeStation Plus 8TB, knocking around at about 400 to 410 nicker. I looked at a few different retailers around the world. This is their easy access point into private cloud. It has got an enhanced amount of storage, an enhanced amount of power under the bonnet versus that of the BeeStation 4TB that was released around about 1.5 years ago, I think. And do you know what? I actually quite like this. I like the idea of this. I like who this is for. I like the package. I like everything that's included with it. But I will say, this is not going to rock anyone's socks off. For those who aren't aware, rather than arriving with DSM, BeeStation systems arrive with something called BSM, BeeStation Manager. It has cherry-picked a number of different elements of the DiskStation Manager DSM platform and created a far more streamlined, smooth user interface, and ultimately something for beginners to get behind. Those that are jumping away from cloud services, or even those that are jumping away from complicated NAS systems that just want something simple along the side for their home, for their simple backups. It has effectively their own modified versions of things like hyper backup, file station, just general system management, and now native Plex support inside, right the way down, by the way, to hardware transcoding as well, thanks to the CPU that, although is about 1 billion years old, does have hardware integrated graphics on board. Now, BSM arrives with system management and BeePhotos and BeeFiles. Now, again, there are client application tools for mobile devices, for desktop devices, and of course accessing the device in the web browser. And setting the device up the first time is done in less than 10 minutes. So again, as a simplified storage solution, it is targeting a different market, but it is definitely going to be appealing to that market. Even in terms of that price point, now yes, this arrives with the storage drive inside, sort of in line with the brand's policies of late when it comes to hard drive support, going very in-house, own label. And the 8TB drive inside is indeed a Synology hard drive, a 3310 Synology Plus drive inside there. Now, let's look at that price tag. This was $409 on a couple of different retailers. Now, if we compare that against trying to buy an 8TB NAS hard drive, a WD Red Seagate Iron Wolf, or even Synology's own drive there, they knock around for about $179 to $199. And if you want to get the same hardware, which is the quad-core Intel Celeron processor, the J4125, and 4 gig of DDR4 memory, that kind of system profile, if you're looking at a 2-bay, you're looking at, again, around $339, maybe close to $299 on offer. Or if you're on a 1-bay NAS system that will have an ARM processor inside and less memory, that's when you're looking at around $149 to $199. Ultimately, for as a complete software package, $409 is very appealing. And much like the previous BeeStation, I will definitely recommend it on the basis of simplicity and ease of deployment. But despite that price point not being too unreasonable, we also have to clarify what this is. It is a single hard drive NAS system. So notwithstanding the lack of something like RAID, redundant array of independent disks, and it's effectively having a drive failover, because if that drive dies, your data is gone. Oh my. Don't worry, it still works. Whew. On top of that, you've also got a system here that's running off a single mechanical hard drive. Now, that hard drive is probably going to hit at most, on average, between 160 and 200 megabytes per second on a good day. And you've got to think about sustained and stuff like that. You're going to be running all of your system operations from this. The full I/O from that drive is just not going to be great. So when you first start setting the device up, there's going to be lag. Everything from thumbnail generation to just setting up all your indexes. And even then, long term, the CPU and memory deployment inside this, the hardware configuration, is good. I will say that we've seen that same hardware configuration, man alive, we have seen that hardware configuration in numerous Synology NASes in the last 5 to 7 years. So we know Synology can do well with that hardware configuration for their software, but running off a single drive is still kind of madness, even in that more streamlined software. The design is slick as all hell. It's not hot swappable. It's one way while you want that, but also getting to the drive is not that straightforward. Unlike the previous generation 4TB model, this actually has an integrated fan. We'll talk about noise in a moment. And in terms of ports and connections, there's sod all on the front. We've got ventilation at the top and the bottom, but on the rear, we've got two USB 5 gig ports in Type A and Type C. We've got a DC power jack there that goes into a wall-mounted PSU. And you've got your network, a single gigabit Ethernet. Now, I know we talked about this being a value proposition. I know we just said this is great value for what you're getting, but I'm going to say it. 1 gigabit Ethernet? Come on, Synology. We now know you've got 2.5 gig NICs knocking around that factory of yours. Why is this only 1 gig? I get it. This is simplified. I get it. You know, the I/O of one drive is negligible, but still, this is 1 gigabit port there, when a hard drive we've just seen, or we've just discussed, will give you, again, 162, 180 to 200 megs of sequential. This is bottlenecking beyond the extreme. This is meant to be better than cloud services, and people are starting to use cloud services with gigabit internet speeds there. Yes, sustained latency, etc., and relaying from a distant server aside. Bottom line, I like the configuration, but I won't, 1 gig, get lost, mate. Now, remember I said about the lack of RAID failover? They do make a very good argument in the system for just the sheer multi-leveled backup operations of this. So you can back this up onto a destined Synology NAS on the local area network or even remotely. So you can use that profile in order to do that with your Synology account equipped system. You've also got Synology C2 services that you are subscription based but allow you to back up remotely. You've also got those USB, because there's 2 of them in there, and I did go ahead and connect 2 different USB devices to this. You can back up wholesale configuration or individual files and folders with versioning as well, and timing and schedules, and a certain number of iterations before you overwrite the oldest one, utilizing the USB drives there, so you have that level of backup. Then you've got snapshot support built in, again, which you can set the number of images, set the number of versions. The system has file version control as well, up to 8 versions. So not having RAID is a pain, and definitely there's performance losses there as well, but it still has to be said that this isn't unbackupable. There's loads of ways you can back this up. And that's notwithstanding the fact that the device arrives with a 3-month trial of BeeProtect. So that is a dedicated backup portal for this to back this up on Synology's cloud. Their C2 service, but it is rebadged and relabeled into a portal input there. If you go for the 4TB or the 8TB, the pricing there for 1 month is just shy of $15, and it's around $143 per year to back up 8TB of storage. Again, that's not a bad amount for 8 terabytes of cloud storage, and obviously it's dependent on you having a BeeStation in the first place, but I think we can all agree the whole reason a lot of users are going for this is to get away from the cloud. So the idea they would get it and then use a cloud-based subscription service as a layered backup, I think a small number of users are actually going to use that. The trial is nice that it includes it, and maybe that's a gateway thing, but still, as good as that might be for some users, I would say that is still a small minority. Man alive, small minority. Mr. Hollerand, my English teacher, would have kicked me half to death for that. I will also add regarding BeeProtect, although I like that it's included with this and it is incredibly simple to set up, I don't like how aggressive the marketing, or not so much the marketing, but the pop-ups and the information about BeeProtect on the system is when, not only when you first set it up, but also when you're finding your backup options, it really pushes BeeProtect at you. And at the bottom in tiny letters, it's like there are other ways to do this if you want. And even then, you can't use third-party NASs to back up onto third-party targets. There are exceptions when you want to sync and connect your cloud services within B files, but still, there's a very tactile presentation at work there with regards to chiefly promoting Synology's own platforms over others. Again, let's face it, it's 2025, we know brands do this, but still nonetheless, I do think that it's going to be slightly off-putting for those slightly more in the know. Now, as this is a mechanical drive and this is a system with a fan inside, I think some users that are looking for a more modest setup are going to wonder about noise. So when it came to noise, and again, the fan inside, I couldn't find much control over that fan, not surprising. The software is a great deal more restrained than that of DSM. When the system was in idle, so that was with the device set up and I'd left it alone for 10 minutes, the drive kind of doing its own thing, but not being read or written to, just sitting there in standby. It was around 36 to 38 dBA. Now, during active access, and of course there's only one drive and the OS is on it, so everything you are ever doing on this is pretty much using that drive. It was around 38 to 40 dBA. It's not a high-end, highfalutin 7200 hard drive, so that's actually not too bad. Let's listen to those now. Next up, power consumption. It is a very efficient Intel Celeron CPU. It is kind of old. I think it's a 2019 generation, that J4125 processor there in idle. So again, that was with the drive inside, the CPU at effectively nothing, sub 5%. It was at 9.4 to 9.5 watts in idle. Now, during those access periods that I talked about there, again, a single drive, but it's running an Intel x86 CPU there. It went up to 16 to 18 watt utilization there, which is quite modest, still pretty good. And again, that was peak, remember? So you're not going to be accessing this all the live long day. I don't know about your synchronization and utilizing up to 8 connected users that you can use on this device remotely and locally. But still, power consumption-wise, that's very, very modest, I would say, for those peak periods versus idle. Next, temperatures. Because again, one of the issues you find with more modest systems, and one of the reasons, by the way, you very, very, very rarely find Intel x86 one-bay systems is simply the heat and also the trade-off between the I/O and performance of a single drive versus that of the CPU and memory that surround it. In terms of heat, I will say that after 1 hour, the system got to about 42 to 44 degrees. It's got warm here in the UK at the moment. Can you tell I'm wearing a hoodie? But after 24 hours, then it went up to 47 to 48 degrees. And again, we checked each side of the system. Port at the back, nothing at the back really got that hot. And when we got the camera nice and close in there into the ventilated panels, we could see that the inside after 24 hours was sitting around 50 degrees. So again, that was with the system being intermittently accessed every hour. We were doing changes so we could test the software a little bit there. I'm happy with that for a one-bay NAS with that kind of hardware profile, but you can definitely see why they've integrated a fan into this one when they hadn't in the previous gen. And then finally onto that software. Now we've deep dived. We've looked into BSM and the mobile applications before, but again, it's a great little platform. It's full of that Synology design charm, which most people love. Some people don't because it feels quite restrictive sometimes, but B files is very clear. The client applications are great. The synchronization tools, by the way, are great as well. It's got a lot of those elements of Synology Drive. So you've got file pinning, file streaming, freeing up data after 30 days, permanent pinning of files. Lovely stuff. And that's, by the way, across all of the clients as well. B Photos has got most of the integrated factors of Synology Photos built into it there. So you've got that light AI edge photo recognition, faces, places. Then you've got object recognition. You've also got utilizing geolocational data mapped into the metadata of your photos. So you can see big maps of things. That's all quite well put together. Also, a lot of the synchronization and back-end backup tools built into the system settings. borrowed from things like Hyper Backup, borrowed from Synology's own DSM baseline platform as well, are all integrated into it. The backup operations from Hyper Backup, from USB copy, are all kind of melded here into that three-stage, three-doorway Synology App Center there. And when it comes to the Plex integration, which again, something isn't available on the previous gen, installing Plex on this is pretty similar to a normal Synology NAS, but it is a wee bit streamlined. So for example, you install it via the integrations options on the main, there's no app center, you just got to go into integrations, not dissimilar to something like Unify. You click it, it installs Plex there, and it allows you to do it either with a Plex token, if you want to go more technical, or you can just install the app if you choose. Plex tokens will simplify, but if you don't know what you're doing, the simple installation will be fine. And you can migrate over an existing op. It creates individual folder structure, individual shared file structure, I will say as well, that also are given immediate permission for access in the Plex app via that one install click there, which is really nice. You still have to go through the installation process if you're not using the token method. But that means you still got to connect to those folders. But at the very least, you haven't got to knock around with users and shares and who can access it for Plex very easily. It does all that for you automatically. And indeed, hardware transcoding, obviously, you're going to need a Plex Pass to take advantage of that. But you don't have to knock around like with Docker. We have to assign special access to those elements. It's just there. You just go into Plex, go into transcoder, bang, you can use transcoding if you want for HEVC, whatever. It's a lovely, smooth installation. This is never going to replace your existing Synology NAS. It simply isn't, but it's not trying to. And I will say, compared with the previous generation BeeStation, well, the 4TB that is still currently available, this 8TB with an improved hardware config is definitely a marked improvement moving forward. Now, Synology are definitely, clearly going to expand this. That software, you don't spend that much time investing in that software unless you expand out, and fully expect 2 and 4 bay versions of this in the near future. Whether that means phasing out the Plus series is something we'll have to wait and see. But I will say that I like this for what it's trying to be and what it is. I don't like that there still is no dual or RAID configured version. There's no 2.5 GBE. There's slightly incongruous and, I would argue, tactical utilization of backup operations on this, which are going to be a necessity, which feel like they have now been monetized on this in a way where they could have allowed more ways to do it either for free or using existing ops that you have in place. I like that they've included a lot of those options, but I don't like that once again they feel like they're being shushed into being the only gig in town. If you're looking for simplified storage, this is a great way to get it. It's a very affordable way to get it. And as long as you understand what you are getting for that money and how that price at $400 or whatever breaks down, this is a very appealing proposition. Just know it is not an alternative to a Synology NAS, but maybe you don't want that. And I know there are some users that actually want this software on a Synology NAS system. But what do you guys think? There should be a written review coming soon, already live in the description below, link there at the top. And if you found this video helpful, and if you want to buy from the retailers that I've listed in the description below, please use those links to do so. Doing that will result in a small commission coming here to me and Eddie at NAS Compares, and it allows us to keep doing what we do. I'm really looking forward to talking about this device more, because although it's not perfect for everyone, this has been a slightly tiny shining light in a sea of Synology releases this year that have slightly felt rather controversial. This at least knows what it is and what it's trying to be. But let me know, let's talk about it in the comments. I'll see you next time.